Bellevue School District regular board meeting of the directors. Today is Thursday, November 3rd, and the time 30 p.m. I'm, and I will announce because I see her, Director James.
Christine Chu.
Seema Sarafan. Carolyn Watson. I understand Director Shui will be joining us, but later this evening, director discussion. At this time, I would ask Executive Director Person.
Great night for my two fronts. That's always nice. Zara is the student that had discovery. Zara Al Nabi is a 10th grader digital discovery. She's here tonight, and she's accompanied by a couple of teachers as give us a play. Sandra Shanklin, teachers at the. So, Zara.
And Director Harrison will pledge allegiance. Thank you. Let us know when you're going to start. So we are on the stylish people. Think these looks on the next step. To an Thank you. Sarah, this is now your time, so I'd love to hear. We will attentively to anything you can tell us about your experience. So take it away. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we understand why you're speaking. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Sora Alnami. Today I'm going to be technology is significantly involved in our everyday lives and Thomas Ford conducted a survey in high school students. The result was 62% of those students expressed an interest in the topic, 53% of which. As I was doing more, As I was doing more background research to obtain more knowledge, trend I came across was many high schools lack accessibility to computer science with tech-related clubs. I myself, as a student who's interested in computer science, have the discovery. So I contemplated on a good solution. Landed me the idea of computer science clubs. Next. The reason why I believe students would be more interested in taking a computer club rather than taking a science class is because students, one of the things tend to take into account prior to signing up to a class is how they believe. And computer science can seem pretty intimidating and which is why I believe students would be interested in taking a science club to expand their knowledge, get to know the topic. Well, it would be engaging and it could help expand their knowledge. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you again for coming and to all the teachers who came.
time, we just want to acknowledge some of the things happening in the month of November between now and our next meeting. So 2 days ago was de la Muerte, the Day of the Dead. Next Tuesday is Election Day, and entire month is Native American Heritage. Acknowledge, celebrate. At this time, I ask for item 1.7, second to the motion I made to have the second. Is there any discussion? None? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Carries. Time, I ask for a consent agenda. Second. None? Aye. Any opposed? Right, at this time, I have an update from our
It is my pleasure to take my
I've come already mentioned. Con I imagine middle school be a new
you. I want to go ahead and go maybe in alphabetical order if any fight questions for answers perhaps later, but start with Director RS and we'll just I'll hold mine for you. Director, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you for the report, but really, I gotta comment on the process that you're using. The empathetic process of sort of investigating it's really interesting to me. I'm excited to see it. I'm trying to wrap my head around what it means because it really opened a door up to being much more inclusive. It's working, but it looks great. And I'm really excited that you've got a whole. I had things I wanted to call out. One is, um, I wanted. I saw all the things you're discovering from the empathetic gathering, but some kind of out. I don't have clarity what the essence of that might come back in during. They didn't see that, so I'm kind of wondering when that comes back in. Those boundaries. And then the second thing is, if there were time, if the other folks who each had like able to say one sentence about what was it. I know that's not actually asked on that, but it'd be really nice to. I think you for participating.
And maybe we'll do that after we discuss your question. I love that. I'll go next and I'll just say, I love how you framed asset based. I thought that was mindset. Thank you. I have one question. Mentioned and really stressed higher like seeing our needs. Relevance, I understood. And when they talk about wanting choice, get a sense. I've used about like the month at least choice. Way to understand. Oh, I am the first. And there was a nationally. So that's where but it doesn't have that, the slide that I really like, which is one that talks about the well-being academic. And one thing that really idea actually valuing and also valuing. I mean, there's a lot of places. I guess the other, I don't see it here, although I. See, kind of a basic. Much for fairly I guess the question I have is I maximum amount
just a question or two that I have. I am also curious if the boundaries of the different instruction concepts and grading, mastery-based learning, shape or form. That how does that may just I just want to, like I said, it's unclear to me what the boundaries are and what the are included. So if that's coming, it's okay to not answer that with any rigor. That'll be part of ideation.
Superintendent Jarvis, I think something you want to jump in, and then I'd love. Oh, okay, all right, okay. So then if I could, if you could get a microphone, and I love the idea of a sentence each. Thank you, and I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think thing that's really stood out to me. Right, striving for, and I put out I mean, thoughts, sure worry. How am I gonna on me and went around the table? His name was Diego, and he just flipped the whole. Started saying, "Well, me, it's like this thing." That whole
From our student sentence. Thank you. I'm going to give the final word to Superintendent Jarvis, but because it's his update, but I just want to thank all of you. Dr. Macias, if you want to say something, well, as conclusion, do, otherwise I'll. Think of we need. With us to follow.
Some wonder. Not quite. Choose what. Purpose. And
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Down is worth, and I'm going to turn now to item 4, which is our public comment. And to start that, I'm going to read a little bit about public comment, but I also just want regarding our superintendent search. If you go to our website, you will see an indication regarding our super, and it has a unique opportunity. Members of the, I invite you all out that as a member, be able to and have your voice heard in that process we have, and invite you to. So let me now go to comments. So this is the time during our meeting when we're grateful as a comment, and we greatly appreciate your thoughts. Because of the limitations of our calendar, so we do ask you to tell us regarding our public comment guidelines and post line and projected right now. Just remind you that we will, whether invited remote, generally don't, and details again are projected on the screen. Also let you know that additionally by email, by leaving, and as noted earlier, we based find speaker civil manner and not acceptable privacy harassment. We also let you know that not accept regarding discrimination or harassment, and that's again, thank you. So are listening carefully. Gentleman here, I think I read to see you, and we will start our clock in a second. Expected.
I too here am tonight to celebrate some good work, specifically MTSS. It's a framework that the district has been committed to and really permeates a lot of the very initiatives that the district is using. We see it in our school SIP plans. We see it with PBIS specific staff. We see it with MTSS initiatives, PLCs, and MTSS teams. Many other occurrences are here in the Bellevue. And specifically, my ask tonight is how can we bring policy along to match that amazing work that's doing? The district currently has an RTI policy, and that's been the concept has been updated in MTSS to be a continuum of, and I think more than just renaming the policy, to really refocus on tier one and ensure that you get 80% of the kids served with tier one, and then you're not over tier two and tier three. And as that goes from, rather than just an intervention policy, is how do all the other components of MTSS, how does it tie into staff training? How does it tie into family engagement? How does it tie into data-driven shared leadership and evidence-based practices, whether that be instructional practices or whether that be career? So my ask tonight is twofold, is how as a district can policy come alongside the amazing work that it's doing and really make sure that really leveraging all the aspects of MTSS through to make it effective in the class. And for me, this isn't just about policy. Ultimately, I see the potential and how it affects my own kids' outcomes. And as they have challenges and I look for interventions and assessments, I want the system.
Thank you. If we have comment, it's like online. Okay, Christy, you have the ability now to microphone and turn your on. We start.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Just before you start, I want to say if anyone else online wishes to comment, please raise hand button at this. Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead. Okay, great. Hi, sorry, I'm in my car tonight waiting for my children to get out. So my name is Christy Schlesinger and I have 2 students in the district. Mental health is a priority for many families across our district and the nation. The noticeable decline in my daughter's mental health in 2nd grade was what brought me into advocacy work around dyslexia. It was heartbreaking watching her go from loving school to coming home crying most days and feeling dumb. She was extremely smart, creative, and innovative in so many areas, but this anxiety around reading continued to build. She did not want to be singled out and refused to use any accommodations in the classroom because she didn't want to be different. Her 2 amazing teachers in 4th grade began to empower her so she could find ways to break through and focus on her strengths. Many of the students who are struggling with mental health across our district are neurodiverse, and traditional benchmarking in our educational system disadvantages these students, measuring them against the very things they find challenging. The quality and way in which accommodations for struggling students is implemented has a profound impact on their success and supporting their mental health. Students don't want to be singled out, they want to be supported and empowered in their classrooms. What can the district do to support appropriate and effective accommodations in a way that is inclusive so these students don't feel intellectually inferior? In the past, we've asked for a dyslexia policy to support these neurodiverse students. What could this look like in elementary, middle, and high school? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Messenger. A little bit of your statement got cut out from audio, but I think got most of it. If when you listen to it or watch it later, but if we can let her know if there was something that she heard or didn't hear said, yeah, you can always email. Thank you again, or thank you again. But this time we will go to item 5, which is start with 5.1, which I Director Carson sent on. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's Jeff Watson. Sorry about that. Jeff Thomas, apologies.
Thank you, Board. That is
it as a condition of that condition of the prior time with the consistently last couple of state guidelines, CDC guidelines, and other emergency proclamations. So we have been very consistent in our approach and really have not deviated from public policy guidance at the national, state, and wherever applicable at the local level, which has been King County. So we place this item before directors.
Thank you. I did not get a recommendation. So is there a recommendation from superintendent?
Recommendation would be that in past couple 3 years through the COVID, trying to find recommendation would be extensions by county health.
I see Director hand is up, and I think it's time to be able to just get people's.
Yeah, I asked a few questions on Monday and I apologize, but I didn't see a response. Somebody emailed the response. Sorry, I didn't. It was emailed. Okay, so the 3 questions that I had just to find out were there any things that King County was doing? Sounds like the answer to that is no. If that's wrong, let me know. And then secondly was which districts are doing something different and additional, if any, around us. And the third was are there other things that we can do besides the regulation to protect the health? Like, are we going to continue to invest in vaccine clinics and information campaigns and that sort of thing? So I am sorry that I did not see the response.
There is a memo, and it's and at least your second question about what other districts are doing. It's captured on page 2.
It says with those who are not. I didn't see
It
the
says
ones
still
who might
requiring
be.
vaccines are decided like Washington. But if there's an answer that you've got, I'd like to share.
Thank you, Director Fairfan. We did in a area district did not do so. I had sent out a request to human resource directors in and around responses that I did in which we let the requirement sunset. Majority of the districts that I'm in contact with and are surrounding following lifting and are not requiring the vaccine any longer. The only prominent district that's one of the neighbors is Lake Washington, and as of that time, they had not yet decided that they were going. And in terms of some of the other ongoing measures that we as much of what we learned as regular practice, and we're not going to change those. Very, very assertive regarding vaccine clinics. I believe clinic last week. So those are things that we will do, and also will be prepared should the conditions change, as we have been the last years, responsive. I think benefits in that, and we ever were before. I feel like we're in a
Thank you for the answers. As far as my input goes, I during COVID, I was part of a group that helped form and sustain a group of districts who got together and worked support each other regionally because health concerns don't know borders, right? Like and regional local treatment is important. And we worked with the county health departments and so forth. And what I learned from my time with that is, and what it sort of cemented for me, was the importance of respecting the health agencies, that health policy, but the importance of other agencies to collaborate and to work together, both the information sharing, to promote the access to resources, and all of the things that our families need. So I think like the appropriate thing policy-wise, in terms of whether or not we put that restriction in place, I think that's a state level decision and it makes sense, or in some cases it may be guided by the county to do something special if there's a regional issue. But the health experts should be setting that, not our district. I do wonder if we should consider some level of policy that memorializes, and I don't think we need urgency. This can come down to 5.4, but potentially want policy that talks about how we commit to collaborate with health agencies in terms of providing resources, promoting vaccination access, promoting health information access to our community so that those things come out, and even promoting things like mask supplies and access and other supplies in our schools so that when someone's sick or when someone's worried about getting sick, that they have resources. Those types of things need to be along in our school policy handbook. But I don't think that we need to set a policy about vaccines. I think that should be driven by the health experts. Should be driving the policies for support the health within our school district for all the people there.
That sounds actually, that sounds very reasonable. And I would say I have the same view of one of the values within, one of the things I valued was clarity of our district on anchor and follow guidelines. And sometimes that is a challenging place to be, and sometimes your place to be, but I think it's the right place to be. Actually, official and how we respect what we know, and the access to which they have the broadest data. I do like the idea of ensuring that here on the respect that we give, and then the support. So I would say that's where I'm leaning. I know we have two more board directors from here, so Director Watson or Director Aris, jump in.
Because I think every little vaccination transmission by a smidge. I think that I keep being reminded that I'm not a public health official, but I do feel strongly I'm down. I've kind of forgotten that, and the kids, go home to pregnant moms who hospitalized if they don't. So don't like it, but I'll go along with it because it's not public health. Hi, while we're doing that, can we look, let me ask if we can 512, and it seems nicely written according to infection control program. In the first paragraph, it talks about it strongly urges that susceptible school staff members, volunteers, provide evidence of immunity against tetanus, MMR, so forth. So it just says strongly urges. So could we add COVID or SARS-CoV-2, appropriate word is that paragraph? That would be mine. And then the second paragraph goes on to say, the board authorizes the superintendent for staff immunization. So that's good. So I think that
Can you say what number that policy?
it's
6512.
yeah, 6512. Yeah. So I think all you have to do is add a word.
Or, potentially we could also consider additionally
Yeah.
or alternatively those and more broadly public health guidance. So meaning challenge of following, like calling out something and end up in like indirectly. I hear you, which is why one could do both.
MMR, but then goes on to talk about HIV and Hep B.
Understand. And I would just say, I want to just acknowledge and back to the point of you're articulating. The main thing that I would say is biggest line in the sand is do you depart from public health guidance? Because the minute you depart, there's daylight between public health guidance and it allows you to go above it or below. So I think that's the I think. But I hear the concerns. Director Aras.
I'm for adding a policy or adjusting policy for the business part is something that will challenge us, prep us for the future possibility that happen. But I also want to make sure that we are acknowledging and supporting our community that are more challenged than others. Our students.
So I hear, but I want to just make sure, just 1 second. What I'm hearing overall is support for what I'll say was the first director who spoke, Director Chu, but support for the articulation of we followed guidelines, have an opportunity within our policy to make that more clear, as well as to indicate how we as a district, as a partner within the community, support through our actions, availability of vaccines, and as Vice President Watson outlined, adjustments to 512. So I think I've heard that, and I don't know if that answers the superintendent's request for the board input. Does it?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Really, the question in front of us, the most dramatic is on Monday, the governor's mandate required districts were extend the second question, which was adding to communicate with staff with HR vaccination staff.
I think that's where we are, but I know Director Chu had her hand up for, I think.
Yeah, I'm not going to change any of what was just said. I'm not changing.
Oh, I thought you were. I was like, oh dear. Okay.
No. I wanted to just clarify that the reason I suggested we make policy modifications, and I thank Carolyn for identifying 6512, is exactly the reason that Carolyn brought up, and I want to actually call it out. It's part of our values. Talk about being like thoroughly inclusive, and COVID has given us an opportunity to think about what that means from many perspectives, but also from a health perspective and a vulnerability perspective. And so I think I am proud and happy to be from a nation that values independence, gives people freedoms. But I also acknowledge that individual freedoms can sometimes inhibit the freedoms of other individuals. And if we are truly invested in a good culture, we have an opportunity not just to follow guidelines from the CDC, but we can follow those in a way that pushes the boundaries and changes the way that we look at it. And so whether it's the suggestion, I watched kids in our school visit the other day. I watched a teacher have tissue and hand sanitizer ready for a child. And I watched all those things. Do we keep masks in every classroom from now forward? Do we encourage kids who have a cold instead of throwing a tissue at them? Do we throw a tissue and a mask? There are many things, there are many opportunities that we can do without being overwhelming or draconian, that can be still individual and more. And so we set a policy that encourages behaviors that make an actual shift for our kids and our. I think we're trying to do that with the environmental stuff by being more articulate about it. I think we were that also in our health and culture. So if we are truly committed to inclusion and student well-being, I don't think it's a trivial idea to adjust this.
Okay, thank you. We're at a good place. So I move now to items 5.2, 5.3, for which
Good evening, board. Thank you for this opportunity. First resolution that is before you, under 5.2, is a resolution asking you provide authority to myself and Lieutenant Jarvis to issue general obligation bonds and refunding bonds. So the first set of general obligation bonds would be for $70 million. This is that in February of 2020 for that bond election. This is the second time we're selling bonds under this authorization. And this money will be spent within the 3 years required for any bonds that we sell and funds for. This money will be used for projects that were outlined in that election process. Second is $65 million for refunding bonds. And refunding bonds is very similar to finance your home mortgage and can then get funding that is at a lower interest rate. And I know interest rates have been going up. In fact, they just went up again this year, or recently. But these really follow a little bit of a different increasing because they're tax-free. And so from an investment perspective, the interest rates don't really necessarily fully follow the prime rate. We will only do this if come December it is still favorable to us and to our taxpayers. And this is really savings for our taxpayers. It's not like we'll be paying them back money, but it is less money that we will have to collect from taxpayers in the future to pay back these general obligations. Happy to answer any questions. I also have bond counsel here. Mr. Scott Janet is here with us from Hale Gates and Dr. Chu. I'm sorry.
No, that works. Thank you. I prefer it. The question I have is something that I really, it's not much of a question for me. I just want it on the record from you. You know that when we prepared and initiated the bonds in the process that we had a different enrollment, we had different situation in place. And so our priorities may need to shift to most responsible, to use the funds in the most responsible way we can. We still have a pretty substantial need for these funds, but I think that how we apply them and when we use them may shift. You just for folks that is under consideration, that we are being careful about the order of operations and so forth. Just, or if that's not true, then tell me that maybe we need to take a second look.
It is absolutely true. We are reevaluating our facility, our long-term facilities plan based upon realignment of enrollment forecast. Executive team has spent a day at a retreat kind of going through options. Information will be coming forth in terms of how do we best utilize our assets that we have in our facility staff to meet the needs of our students. Information on that in the pretty close to immediate.
Thank you for the answer, and thank you also for being the financial steward that you are and that you have been for almost a decade here. I really appreciate your careful attention to doing right by our community funds.
I will reiterate my thanks for giving you before for all your work. I don't have any questions. I have a request. I think Director Chu kind of covered it, but I think if you're able to give us a one-sentence summary, helpful for members of the, how would you summarize? I asked our board coordinator project the resolution that we're guys. Exactly what we did.
Are giving money to myself and Dr. Javers to sell up to $70 million in general obligation bonds, $65 million of bonds to use for projects that were previously by our voters for providing facilities for our students. Does not mean that we are fully marching down the path of what the have approved. We are re-looking at that, re-examining that. However, we have some projects underway that still need to happen. So, for example, the remodeling of New High School, and we know that that has already started and going on. So there are some things that are happening, but we are reevaluating.
So for projects already approved, this empowers you to the funds are needed, but it doesn't mean that you've actually spent all of them.
Correct.
I might just interject a little bit. Years ago,
We like humor.
years ago, there were actual bonds and boxes of bonds that I could carry in. Then I could think about South America. That's all gone these days with the, so much less fun that you could do. But it does authorize and I able to move the sale at the right price, the right condition, the whole. Yeah. It's just a lot less fun and it's better protected.
Are there other comments from directors?
Yes, so the rates that we pay on our bonds don't necessarily follow the prime rate. So these are tax-free municipal bonds, and so they're more aligned with the investment opportunities. And right now, with the stock market behaving as it is, they become more valuable because they're a guaranteed return. And so the return does not need to be as great as it has been historically. So it's more driven by the financial markets and what's happening there as opposed to the prime rate, which drives like rates on mortgages. Yeah.
I just want to say, on top of all of this, and make judge fighting us guys are fun. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries and the resolution passes. We go to the second resolution, the certifying the general fund.
Yes, so this is a resolution that you pass every year. And so in 2022, February of 2022, we held a levy election for education operations levy as well as a capital and tech levy. This is with respect to the education operations levy. We ask voters to approve a higher amount than we can necessarily collect in any given year, so that it gives us a little bit of room in case we have an unexpected growth in enrollment or the legislature changes the limits, that type of a thing. As a result of that, what we are basically saying is with this resolution is that we are telling the county, King County, who collects our taxes, to collect the maximum allowable under current law, which will be less than what voters have approved. So we're saying, based upon the legislation and the calculations that OSPI does, please collect the maximum amount allowed.
Okay. Are there any questions for Deputy Superintendent DeVita or the council here from K&L Gates?
I move that we approve the resolution as presented.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The resolution passes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we now go to item 5.4. And Executive Director Harrison, just for context, as you recall, we were on October 6th, we had a discussion about policies and just the sense that we wanted to have a more clarity as to exactly what policies would be prioritized when and how throughout the coming year. And you agreed that you would bring forward in time for our pre-board planning session on Monday, a proposal of how that schedule could go for us to discuss and potentially approve it on the 10th, assuming there wasn't a desire to have anything revised. So that's where we are. But in the meantime, I know Director Aris had an ask that she wanted to convey and I think discuss around a particular policy. So we added that for 5.4 for the purpose of discussion. So I'm going to hand it over to Director Aris.
Thank you. In reflection of our last general meeting and what we discussed around policies and our schedule for this year, I'd like for us to consider a mindset of putting our mission and vision statement in the forefront of each and every student's well-being. With that, reorganize or readjust our policies to address the policies that is on our list and add actually a few more that directly impacts our students' access to education, their social, emotional, mental health, as well as their academics as well. With that in mind, I would like to ask to push the special education policy as I guess, forward so that we address it earlier and put more emphasis or I guess our human power and time to it, because it is addressing our students' basic needs. And my understanding is that it was initially adopted in 2013 and it has not been modified since, if that's correct. I understand it is in compliance with everything that is need to be compliant with, but our district has made it clear that we're not just compliant, we want to be innovative, we want to do more than that. And I think by addressing this particular policy, we could do some good in a way that it's not just addressing our students with special education needs, but also our general education population by addressing, reimagine it a bit and see how we can support our teachers in general education space as well as in special education space. Honestly, it's one space, it's not two. And that we do the most we can so that we're equipping them with the tool set so the outcome is that all students succeed and that we and that in the long run, as we look at our finances being challenged, that it will actually save us money because we'll have all educators on the same page.
I think one thing I did also understand from what I know you were discussing, and I think went back to Executive Director Harrison, who might want to jump in, is you were also talking about engaging the community in that input before kind of a policy is just sort
Correct.
of, here we go, this is yours.
Yeah.
So it sounded like there was an opportunity that you were talking about that might also be on your mind, but I wondered if that was something you wanted to address too.
Yeah, before you talk, I would say, like, I'm not asking for it to be done in this next 3 weeks. I would like for us to start the process, utilize our critical criteria, engage our students and our parents and our staff who are, I guess, in the forefront of this space, and make sure that we are really being holistic about the process and that we not address that at end of the school year, but maybe at the end of the semester, moving into the second semester, so that we have enough time to address all those components in a timely manner, because it's not just about voting yes or no on a policy, but everything that comes after, and that we don't drag this out to be not, a 1 year thing, but I don't want it to be a 3 year process. I would like for it to be more immediate so that we could impact our students in the best.
I want to support this with some additional information. I think that what Director Aris is saying, it couldn't be more important in terms of inclusion, but the timing couldn't be better than right now in this moment. So here are 3 reasons why the timing is critical. First, we are about to do our middle school reimagining. I know that the primary push, the initial push on relooking at the special education policies was about adequate training for our instructors and our paras and planning time, and that piece that is maybe doesn't get spelled out to the extent that we want to commit to it. But I think there are other priorities and other ways of thinking about inclusion that it could benefit from in this time frame. So doing it in time to guide the work for our middle school work, although I'll say they might already be leading the way for us on some of that, would be helpful. Secondly, we're about to redo our strategic plan, which frankly, I think we have set ourselves a decision that's kind of in motion already, that middle school piece will be part of the strategic plan. You don't do an initiative like change your entire set of middle schools and have a whole new strategic plan. So we should be thinking explicitly about what we're deciding there. But if we're going to do a strategic plan, we want to think about how can we do inclusion differently? So how can we think about it? How can our culture accommodate it? That's why I brought it up when Carolyn talked about it in terms of medically impacted students. I think that if we really want to include everybody, it's time to kind of walk the beat. And then thirdly, I'll talk about this more in director discussion, but WASDA's come out with its top priorities that were voted on by the districts. And the top priority this year is getting full funding for special education. What's special about it is that not only is it WASDA's top priority, it's also the superintendent organization's top priority. It's also like all of the major advocacy organizations in the state are advocating for it. I'm in the process right now of collecting data from all 20 King County districts to look at what our deficits are, but all 20 of our districts in King County have a deficit in funding for their special education programs. And when we ask for people to fill that funding, we don't want to ask for just the compliance. We want to be clear about what it looks like to truly educate and include our students receiving special education services. If we have a clear policy in place, it's a lot easier for me to make that ask when we talk to our legislators, because I can be concrete about what I'm asking for and why I'm asking for something that goes beyond the bare minimum that we are scraping the bottom to spend right now. And we go deep into our levy dollars to fill that. So I think that policy itself, having it in place and having had our community active around it, will prime us for better advocacy for the funding we need to support it, and will set the right tone for our middle school program and our overall strategic plan.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
I
We
had-
haven't heard from, I just want to give a chance to Vice President Watson, and then you will have heard a lot of input, and I know you're bringing a proposal for us for Monday, but
Yeah, didn't know that I needed to
I-
react.
I thought you, because you're on the special needs
Yeah, no,
PTA, I didn't know if you had something you
no,
wanted to
I
add
just-
or amplify or anything like
I
that.
just thought that it was underway and that maybe we'd all feel a little better if we had like the schedule, but I understand this is a complex policy and that maybe John had his reasons, but we'd like to see it laid out and just know that we're
It
moving
is
on
coming.
it. Enroll in the
Yeah.
MTSS thing while we're at it.
So on that, I want to jump in now because you've said a lot. I want to make sure that I try and address everything that's come up so far. That last piece that Carolyn mentioned, in our policy process and the policies where it's really important that we get broad stakeholder engagement process. Part of that is developing a stakeholder plan. So that will be part of the process. And this is a full review. So this one is obviously, more time consuming and a heavier lift than, some of the revisions that we've done to policy so far. So it is a high priority, and I want to be really clear that that work has already begun. It's not like we wait until, January, February to work on a policy that was scheduled for April, May. I think it was March, April was the time frame. And last time, Director RSU made the same request about pushing that, and my response was I explained why it was placed there, and it's again the complexity and the amount of engagement that we need to do, but appreciating the urgency, and I completely, concur and understand those 4 points that you made, Dr. Chu, in terms of why the timing is right. And what I'd said last time is that it's if we can if there's the ability to move it up, we will. I also want to hit on something Director Chu suggested last meeting as well, which I think is a really, really good idea, and that is well before a first reading to come to you with a pre-reading. So there's a number of things that can happen, and I think that's a great idea. And so again, hearing the clear request that this get moved up, that the work begin on it immediately, or as soon as possible. Some of that work's already begun, and to keep you updated with the stakeholder engagement plan as we move our way through the process. And the final thing I'd like to say is, Director Arce, you kind of hit on something that I really want to kind of amplify, and that is you said that this policy, even though it's specific and it's clear, it's related to special education services and all the, the sets of legislation, federal, state laws and regulations that apply. It's really important to note that special education services are not the sole domain of special educators, right? So I would completely agree with that and just wanted to kind of amplify that point. So I've heard the request. There's been some great suggestions, and I'll go to work and have a good conversation with Dr. Jarvis tomorrow and forward with a proposal on Monday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I add on just?
Yeah.
And I would really like for you to, as you move forward on this, to see how we could be leading in special education area. How can we reimagine and be innovative? I know it sounds kind of odd, but I like to see our community shift in mindset that this is it's not special ed, but it is they are part of the general ed. They're part of, and therefore we need to address it not in small capacity, but the whole capacity. And
Understood.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing, and I think we do need to move on, but what I'm hearing is not just the when, but just a little bit more around the inquiry around the how of engaging our community. And I think that is, that is as relevant as the timing.
And
it
the scope,
feels,
right? And a little bit about the scope. That's what I think the pre-reading is for.
Yeah.
And I want to acknowledge that John has been very active in making sure that it stays on the policy thing. I think one of the things that brought this to the forefront of the conversation, John, is that I think that some of the wording and the way it was presented sort of implied that it was a lower priority. So in some ways, when we have policies that we know are going to take a long time, sort of establishing and being clear to our community that it's actually a high priority, it's just going to be a longer timeline is important. So the language matters. And I just want to say, I'm really excited to hear that on Monday, at a Monday meeting, we're going to go through some updates. And if you didn't get my list from last time, ask me and I'll type it up or whatever. But I also, just a request, if you could add 6512 to consideration, that's the health one.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Thank you. And just to respond to that quickly, if I may, President Serafan, the point about priority, and that came up last time, and it was really, really good feedback. I was thinking priority, and I kind of conflated the terms phase and priority. All of our policies are high priority, so that was unfortunate, not my intent, and I've updated the schedule now where it's now just phase one, phase two, phase three, and an explanation of why each of those policies are in each of those phases. So that was an important point. And I did listen to the conversation tonight around 6512, and I listened to the recording and copied the transcript. I have the policies that you suggested from last meeting and ready to address those on Monday.
Can I add one more or actually a couple more policies?
Can we do that? May I suggest we do that maybe offline, because I do think, I do want to make sure we don't shortchange our director discussion. So if I can,
I actually would like to state it.
you want to state it
yes,
on,
I
on the
do.
record?
Yes.
Okay, this is,
Can you add 6210?
Did you say 6210?
It is the one which will, I guess, will give it will help us bring, I guess, neutralize some of the power structure between superintendent and board by changing the amount that needs to, I think, you can look at it. It's regarding the one that Shannon has suggested regarding some of, yes, correct, yes. And then also the 2163, which is the MTSS, and also the attendance policy that we had passed, make sure that that's back on. And we talked about the, yeah. And you said the grading policy, right? Okay, thank you.
okay, so we look forward to the discussion on Monday. At this time, we're going to move to item 6, director discussion. I'm going to actually suggest tonight we go in reverse alpha order. So we'll start with Director Watson. We had planned to have Director Shuey joining at 6 p.m. So I think she'll be joining soon. If not, we'll go down the reverse alpha order and come back to her when she joins.
Okay. So today I just wanted to talk a little bit about Jubilee Reach. I think everybody knows that their Festival of Trees is coming up on November 12th, but I also wanted to add some other information. They have just ended a great season of their girls basketball, boys soccer, girls golf, elementary soccer, and they had great participation in the 15 schools in the district where Jubilee Reach does offer sports. And they said that the volunteers, the administrators, and the staff were all very supportive, and it was a community effort. And then the next thing, they're going to be launching their after-school clubs, which are based on student interests, and they're going to work with the district to identify 1,000 families. This is that will receive gifts and toys and food and gas and blankets and holiday items at a special reception that they'll be having at Jubilee Reach. So they need donors and volunteers, and they say they're going to be putting out an announcement about that shortly. And they still ongoing provide groceries and necessities. But they also wanted me to emphasize, because I apologize that I can't go to the gala because of coronavirus. But they're having this gala, which I think we've all been to before, at the Hyatt Regency, and you can sign up online, and it starts at 5:30 with the reception and a 7 o'clock dinner. What? On November 12th. Yes, and then apparently the online auction starts on November 7th in just a few days. So they're doing a whole bunch of good work, and it would be great if we can figure out ways to support that.
Okay, so I don't know if Director Shuey has joined yet. If not, I'll go next, just staying with the reverse alpha order. So I wanted to say a couple of things. First, I really enjoyed our visit to Ardmore earlier this week, and I just wanted to say that it was a great visit for a variety of reasons, and I'm sure each of us will talk about it. So I'll just say one piece of it, which was it'd been a long time since I'd heard parents come and extol how great our communications were. But literally, we had parent after parent talk about how great it was to have such great communications. So I really just want to thank our communications team, as well as I think the team at Ardmore owned a lot of that success, but it's always shared. So I thought that was a nice moment. You couldn't appreciate it if you hadn't heard for so many years the opposite. So I just thought it was really quite nice. But there were many aspects of that visit that were great, and I'm confident that others will talk about that as well. The other piece I wanted to just let people know, YouthLink has been great, and I'm continuing to work with them. One thing that I just want to share is they have an event tomorrow at Sammamish High School from 5:30 to 8 p.m. and it's the Youth East Side Services Latino Heat. It's the Day of the Dead event.
Yeah.
So it's just worth calling that out and letting people know. It's the Bellevue Youth Council that has, that's part of the celebration of diversity, and it's just a great group. So I'd supported YouthLink, I think the first year I was board director, but I think I'm enjoying it even more this time. So, and the other thing I think just also is, uh, I'll come back to it, but I too am looking forward to the Jubilee Reach event. So thank you. So I think Director Shuey is on the line. So Director Shuey, if you're able to, if you can project your video and you want to go next for your director discussion update, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. And my apologies for being late today. As many of us have other elements to life that did happen to me today, and I am here now and will do my best to present what I'm about to present, which is going to be difficult for me, but I will go ahead and just jump in. This past week, the district notified me that a relative had applied for the superintendent position. I believe that the district and I could have navigated. However, in order to avoid the complexities related to potential conflict or appearance of potential conflict, and to spare the district of the distraction, I've made the difficult decision, but a quick decision, to recuse from the superintendent search process. I wanted to also make it clear that I'll resign my position from the school board if the relative were to be hired. There are some consequences that I didn't anticipate from tendering my recusal, including, as I understand it, that there has not been, since I found out of this news, and there may not be any one-on-one conversations with other board directors, even on other topics, for at least a while, and maybe for the duration as we work through the details. And so I wanted to just let the community know that we're working through this and that there will be some consequences that we will just figure out together as we go. And I wanted to just take this opportunity of board discussion to publicly inform everybody and make sure that it's transparent, that there has been an application which has ended up resulting in my decision to recuse from the superintendent search process. I want to make it very clear and make sure that people know. I think that folks know me well enough, but I'd like to say for the record that whether it is single parents or parents of young children who are facing childcare challenges, those with vision or hearing challenges, folks with mental or physical challenges, neurodiverse kids, non-native English speakers, and or racial and ethnic minorities, you have my word and my accomplishments and my continued drive and commitment that I'll continue to represent all of the constituents in fighting for equity and being a voice for all of the historically underrepresented on all the other matters that come before the board. And that's what I'd like to share today.
Thank you, Director Shuey. So we'll keep going through our director discussion. We will probably have some time, and we may be able to do another round through. So we'll see how that goes. So Director Chu, I think you're next.
All right. Let me just start with thank you, Joyce. I imagine that was a very difficult decision to come to, and I know how passionate you are about representing a diversity of views and making sure that all the work that we do, including our superintendent search, is committed to being inclusive and really reflecting the values and needs of our community. So I think that your presence on the board and the work that you do throughout the board work will obviously still impact the work that we do in the search. And so I'm disappointed that you won't be a direct part of that at this point, but I am very grateful for you being kind and open about that. And I really do value the perspectives that you bring, and will do my best to make sure that I think through, as I represent our community, all the places where I learned from you and the board overall, and to reflect that in the search process as well as all that I bring. So thank you. And yeah, I just wanted to start. I am happy to wait for my comments in case anyone else wanted to say something to Joyce, because that's a hard thing that has just come up. And I can imagine, like, if I had a relative who was in that place, I'd want to support them too, while also wanting so desperately to support the community. And yeah, so if anyone else wants to say something, I will just give my space for that. And then if there's time, I'll have my other comments.
The main thing I would like to say is just that you're a valued board director, and I think our community has felt that. We have felt that. And so I think we need to do right by everything that's needed for our superintendent search. And you are a fantastic board director, so I think the hardest part will be ensuring that we do right, which we will. We will follow all the rules we've agreed to as a board to ensure that we do this right. But I think we have a great dynamic as a board, and it will be something we will adhere to do the right thing. But some of the great conversations we have in that area, we won't be able to have. So, but everything else remains. Every other aspect of your participation remains, and we will do it well, and we'll continue on as a great board. So thank you. And thank you for bringing what you do, because you bring a lot of passion to our board. So thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead. If not, we'll keep going. So
Well, thank you for making the tough decision, Joyce. And I appreciate that the presence you've given us up to this point under this process. I keep hearing your voice on the using appropriate words, so I'll keep that in mind. So thank you.
Thanks.
okay, so I go ahead, Director Chu. Thank you.
You good? Everyone's good. Okay, great. Then I will jump in and share things that I have. I have a list of several small things today. Well, I mean, they're important, but they're not too lengthy. First of all, the WASDA priorities are out, and there are 5. I will send a link to John so that they can be in the weekly update. But the first is to meet the requirements for special education. The second is to provide the needed resources for ample, equitable, and stable education. And I did lobby hard on behalf of not just our district, but our region, to fix the wording when it was initially proposed. There are some issues with regionalization factors where, you know, adjacent districts are highly disparate, and it makes it really hard. But that doesn't mean that we get rid of regionalization factors altogether. And so there's an earlier version, if you happen to see it, get rid of it, because the earlier version implies that we don't want regionalization. And frankly, the dollars that would impact on our budget, it's just staggering. We're talking millions and millions of dollars that we would lose. So I am also gathering information from the 20 areas in King County about the impact of regionalization. There's a proposal by OSPI in their budget. Sorry, I'm jumping topics. There's a proposed budget recommended by OSPI. It does make some good recommendations about special education, but I think its solution is too simplistic. because the way that it proposes to fix things is just to change the multiplier. The multiplier is what we use to add money because we know it costs more if students reserve particular services, but it doesn't reflect the actual costs of what happens. And we have a disproportionately high cost for ours. So if you look at the 20 districts in the King County area, we account for only 25% of the students in special education, but we account for 50% of the underfunding in special education, which implies that our costs in this region are higher. And in the same budget where the OSPI is just recommending to fix the multiplier, which would go equally regardless of space, they also are recommending to reduce the maximum regionalization factor, which is just not reasonable for districts like ours. So there you go. The other
Question?
Yeah.
Can I ask, when you started with the priority special ed and fully funding it, I'm assuming WASDA will try to ensure that we're fully funded at the from the federal level. Is that kind
they're
of
going to do both. They are definitely going to make
meaning reversing the unfunded mandate on special ed? Like,
in the IDEA, there was a commitment that the federal government would eventually take that up to a larger percentage of funding. Last year, they had a plan to do that over multiple years, and then at the last minute, they pulled it back. So we're definitely going to go back after the federal dollars that are owed to us to actually, like, sure, there's a mandate from the federal government that we serve our kids, but it's not like we want them to get rid of the mandate. We want to serve our kids. I don't
no,
think
the
you're implying
mandate's
that.
great. It's,
Yeah,
it's,
but we got to
the
fund it.
assumption that we're funded for it.
Yeah.
And then the funds, it's as if we receive them and then everyone else's metric bills out on top of that. And it,
Yeah, and our legislators have tried. Lisa Wellman worked really hard a couple of years ago to put in place the safety net. And the safety net was for those, like, when you have expenditures that exceed your cap, and it helps, but it wasn't enough. And it still left us, $20 million underfunded every year. And in our area, like I said, in the 20 schools in our area, we account for 50% of the underfunded special education dollars. So we need more than that. And I am working with a couple other folks in the area. We just decided to kind of make some things happen, and we're trying to get all the data that we can to support this, and we'll bring it to regional conference. So I hope you guys will attend the large school directors caucus and the equity caucus. There are two places where we'll be talking about things like this. Anyway, so special education will be a huge focus for that. Jane and I are working with Melissa and John and Art to reach out and get some meetings set up with our legislators.
this is while we're at WASDA, or
That's
this
just
is
in
separate?
general.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think we need to.
I don't think our legislators attend the WASDA conference.
No,
I mean, I think they could.
Actually,
but
we
some of
often
them-
there are often several, like, and they're on the committees, like Alex Ibarra will attend, Milan shows up, Lisa Wellman sometimes shows up. So there are education folks. The other priorities are feeding students. So, fully making lunches available, meals available, construction of safe and healthy schools, and transportation. And there was something passed last year that didn't get a lot of exposure, but I think it was important, that our Mercer Island folks worked on with our delegation, which does allow us to use transportation dollars to push towards transportation infrastructure, not just buses. And I don't know how that impacts us, but hopefully that will help the work that Melissa's planning on trying to get us the infrastructure for an electric fleet at some point. So there are some good things going on with our legislators, but we'll be working on that. More to come on that. So I'm sorry I waxed crazy on the spending stuff, but we need this money to serve our kids.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
MTSS intervention, as we look at that and think about that, I was actually thinking, as he was talking during comments tonight, that it's our instructional policy that needs to reflect some of that philosophy about tier 1 being our primary focus. And that's the first place where we fix things and we think about instruction. So John, I don't know if that's part of it, but hopefully that and the core instructional policy, not just the intervention policy, can pick up on the materials that were discussed. The school visit was one of the most inspiring I've been on in over 10 years. The team there is phenomenal. And it's evidenced in the feedback from in all spots. But what I'll say is, I'll just connect it to the MTSS space. This is a school that understands that the first place you fix things in instruction is tier 1, and that you need to give your teachers the time and space to work on that instruction together, that you need to help them gather data. Like just a phenomenal connection between the SEL, the instruction, the interventions, flat out inspiring. I sure hope that their outcomes that their academic outcomes start to reflect more of this, because their social emotional outcomes are reflecting it. And their community, their sense of community across all things is starting to reflect it. School visit, amazing. Oh, and that was the first time I got to see science of reading in action. And the instruction is subtly different, but it was fantastic. I have written down here, oh, Eastside Pathways. I just wanted to make folks aware of something that they're doing. Eastside Pathways is the backbone body of a collective, geez, I just forgot the fancy name for it, but a collective work where organizations all across an area get together to achieve collective goals together. That's it. Yeah, collective impact work. So that's what Eastside Pathways is, and they have been undergoing an evaluation for themselves about what it means to be an equitable organization that does that, and an inclusive one, and to not be a bunch of privileged groups that then kind of stand up for. So they're trying to bring equity into the work that they do and to have that guide it. And it's been a real process. I'm sure it's been imperfect, but I will say that the inclusion and the participation is changing, and the different things with our organizations. And finally, the strategic plan. I do want to just think, at some point, there are a lot of things that we are doing in our district that will impact and will constrain that strategic plan and the questions that we make. So we should be conscious and intentional about those impacts. Like, this middle school plan is a choice about our strategic plan, and it might be the right one, and I'm totally down with that, but we should be intentional. I'm sure I have 30,000 other things to say, but
Let's go to Director Aris. I think I understand Vice President Watson has something additional possibly too, so I want to make sure we get to it. But I do also just want everybody to know that I'm excited about our next meeting. We will have something on governance, and I think that will be we have a workshop study session afterward, and I think we'll have more that will build into some of these longer discussions. Go ahead, Director Aris.
I actually don't have a ton of things to say, but I do want to echo on everything that was positive regarding our school visit at Ardmore. I was very excited to see so many great things. And as you all know, my background is special ed, and I see all these different elements like data-driven discussions, pushing forward on the PLC. And one of the things that I think that was mentioned that I very much appreciate is the environment, the leadership is creating with the staff, which allows the staff to become vulnerable to make that next leap, which is not an easy thing to do, to create that space, but that she's managing it. I can't help but to want to sit here and figure out how in the world can I support that so that it becomes extremely successful with all the different challenges that it has. But I want to re-echo the thank you on the communication part, to hear all the parents say, just celebrating how much communication is coming their direction, and the both, it's a two-way street in the various different languages. And thank you to our communication department. In fact, I'd like to see that app at some point. But yeah, it was a fantastic visit. I very much appreciate it.
Superintendent Jarvis, I know this is a director discussion, but since you were there, I was curious to know, you've been on these school visits. What was your, did you have any input? I can't imagine you didn't enjoy it too.
I guess as a superintendent, there are those times where you just get to be almost paternalistic and sit and smile. Because obviously there's wonderful work there. And we listen to an extraordinarily diverse group of parents talking about their language issues in school and the way the school has handled that and the children. I, I left in the same position you were, which was very proud, very appreciative of the massive effort, the leadership that is there and the attitude of the staff. It's terrific.
Yeah, I think I'll go next to Director Watson, but the one thing I just will call out, because not everybody was able to be there, was there's sort of two sides of things that were interesting for me. One was several parents, there were two parents who had recently emigrated from Afghanistan, and they were saying, our kids did not speak English pretty much at all when they arrived. And now we're struck by how well they speak English, and they were crediting the school, the principal at all levels. And that's what I think several of us are all remarking on. And then, and we didn't have to pull it out of them. They were there to come to thank us, which Director Chu had pointed out. She said, you guys all just came to thank us. This was pretty nice. And it was refreshing. Then later, we also had a chance to ask the students, how many of you speak a language other than English at home? And I would say probably 95% of them raised their hands. And it was, what was really remarkable was they were all, very conversant in English, but also one or two of them spoke two languages at home, and they were just very proud of it. I think they were celebratory of each other. It was just a vibe that came across, and it was just super impressive. So I think that was just one of those unique moments that came about. So.
I had something I forgot, and I'd rather say it now than to undermine whatever Carolyn's going to say, because it's probably not as significant. I just want to let you can end with your word. John, there was one other policy that maybe it would be nice if you had a chance to, or maybe two policies, I don't know, check in with Patty about, because through some of the discipline work that came up, no, through some of the disciplinary appeal stuff, we were made aware that our policy on behavior and consequences, or whatever the heck we call that, it's not quite positive behavioral intervention oriented, is kind of there. But anyway, we were made aware that it doesn't really cover our preschoolers. And when I looked at it more carefully after that I was made aware of that, I also kind of wondered how well and how developmentally appropriately does it cover our special education programs, some of the deeper programs, especially those of a later age, because we actually keep kids with us past secondary for transitions and so forth. So there's, do we need to do anything to augment that? And the other thing that I just wanted to call out is the way that we define harassment, intimidation, and bullying is all kind of collectively done with a state and or federal definition that guides that work. And we don't do much until we get to the procedure to distinguish among harassment, intimidation, and bullying. But one thing I'll say that I noticed when, I got much more up close and personal with these policies for a particular reason, it made me wonder that all of them are defined based on, they count if somebody is being harassed or whatever, based on a characteristic. And I think that you can bully somebody regardless of whether or not they have a particular characteristic. I think that our policy 32, I'll get it wrong, but the non-HIB policy does a great job of collecting all that stuff and accounting for it. But the question that I have, John, is just, do we need to, in policy or procedure, is there anything we should be clarifying to make sure that all of that is covered, that we don't let anything slip through the cracks because definitions weren't properly expansive or what have you? We just want to cover everything. And then somebody else pointed out that maybe on the communications side of how we like, how people access reporting for that? Is there anything we need to do to make it clear that of how they are able to report an incident regardless of what policy it fits under? But I think we already did that work. If you could touch base with Patty, I would be grateful because I promised the group that I would bring these things. Thank you for the time. Sorry, I forgot it earlier.
Thank you. Okay, so Carol, Vice President Watson, you can close. You can close on
Okay,
and your
so,
final update.
It's interesting to hear Christine say that she was so impressed with the school visit, because I also walked away saying that's like, it's in the top 2 of all the school visits that I've ever been on since I've been on the board. That was just super impressive. And one thing that was so impressive was the parents who came out to say thank you, because that never happens. They come out because there's an issue in the parking lot or some other thing they want addressed, but they came out to say thank you. So that was, that really says a lot to me. I was very, very touched by the dads, you know, and so that was the school visit. But and it was also noticeable from the last time we were there, because last time we were there, they were really struggling, you know, and so they've really turned things around. Different principal, different leadership, different everything. So then I could say a few things about Bellevue PTSA Council. I'll never be able to cover everything that they're doing, but Monday at 9:30 is their big once a month meeting. Their reflections program is in the individual schools and it's underway. That's the big art program. They had a college night on last Wednesday that I didn't go to, but they are enthusiastically promoting the Sammamish event on Friday, the same one, the Youth Link YES Latino Heat event. And then the other big thing is to remind you, I think I said this once before, but there's going to be this, I don't know, big TikTok event on November 30th at Sammamish. We'll have to look online to get all the details, but actual TikTok is coming to talk about online safety. So that ought to be interesting.
Okay, so with that, oh, I see a hand up. Director Shui?
Yeah, you said that maybe we could go around again if that would work. That would be great, especially since I'm trying to navigate how to communicate with folks on the board and with President Serafin as well.
Please,
so,
go ahead.
Thanks. So speaking of PTSA, that's one of the complexities I think that we should talk about, which is that updates about the superintendent search will be an important part of what needs to be delivered during my Monday meetings with them. And so I'm not sure how we discuss maybe a transition in that regard. And Carolyn, since you are often there anyway and have a place in your heart for them, maybe, and anybody else, but I'm not sure what the thoughts are about how to discuss that.
Okay, that's a great call out. I think, thank you for bringing it up. It feels like in light of prior guidance, I might ask, we can get some guidance offline, but it would seem like probably the cleanest is at least on the same guidance that we have for our in-person, our board meetings, that we'd probably carry that over to the PTSA council environment, but we can get additional sort of instruction on the best way to do that. Is that kind of what you're also sort of calling out?
I was also thinking that I may not be privy to the same kind of information, and to deliver it in my capacity, and even if I were being a community member logging in or reading what's online, I think it'll have more gravitas and be more appropriate for a board member who's actually part of the process too.
Great, and I think that's where I was sort of suggesting it. Maybe it's Vice President Watson who would do that during that time, but I'm thinking for details, maybe we get direction from our general counsel.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I raised.
Really, yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And did you have anything else you wanted to kind of talk about or celebrate, or anything that you may have wanted to say that we have, you know, a few minutes? Go ahead.
That would be great. Two quick things. One is that when I saw the information come across on the co-sponsored event, that I'm not going to repeat the name of the corporation that we've already heard, but I have concerns and reservations about doing some joint marketing is essentially what it is for an electronic online company that, while generous in its funding of an event, raises issues of that we should be thinking about and concerned about, because we know, for example, that girls and all adolescents and children can be severely and negatively impacted by an online presence and by pressures that come through being subject to and being urged to become a part of that culture and to to be watching the videos and responding in a way that may not be the healthiest, either physically or psychologically. And so I raised it during director discussion because when I saw that came across, it definitely made me think we should have a discussion about this. And while thankful for corporate support, and it comes in lots of different ways, we need to think about it, especially in light of the fact that online bullying, that bulimia and anorexia and all sorts of other kinds of social pressures and illnesses can result from too much online presence. And I did have a couple of community members just talk to me in the last week or so about online, and even things like I have community members who said that they feel really pressured to get their children phones when they don't really want that. And then so when we've got the combination of pressure to have a phone when they feel like their child isn't ready for it and doesn't need it, combined with a normalization of everybody is on this platform and everybody's doing dances or watching things on this platform, raises issues that we should be attentive to. Related to that, I'll also mention that I've also heard from families who say that their kids are being asked to join Instagram. Sorry, I've said the name, but let's just say different kinds of platforms in order to communicate with other kids about their activities. I think that some of that came about when we turned off Teams in order to address some of the potential dangers to kids. But now that I think that we've worked that out, maybe we should be promoting use of Teams that is better monitored and isn't pushing kids to third-party platform that may be, as I said, harmful to them. Finally, just getting back a second to the my news from a little bit ago, I did hear a comment that there was a perception that I want to be supportive of a relative, and I just want to make it very clear that my recusal is not at all about supporting a relative, and it's about doing what's best for the district, and it's about me recusing because I don't want it in any way to be a distraction to the district, and I want to just clarify and make sure that there isn't a misimpression left.
I'm sorry, Joyce. I'm the one who said that, and I meant it in a different spirit. I actually meant it in the spirit of, that you wouldn't interfere with anyone being able to apply, because everyone has a right to apply for a job in our district, and I think that, if it were me, I would, in that position, I would want to tell my relative. I'd be like, wait a second, this is my work too, and it would be hard. And I think that there's I just wanted to respect that you also respected that space, and not to imply that there were anything untoward, or even if it were well intended. I did just wanted to be clear on that.
Thanks. And I think it's best for our district to have as many applicants from a diverse pool, and it is great that we have applicants applying, and we have until November 7th. So for anybody listening, I continue to say, get in those applications and tell your friends and relatives about it, but maybe not if you're a board member. I don't know. I still think even in that case, it's important to get us as many great candidates as possible. Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying. And I also have a question for you, just because it might, I don't know, I just guess I feel like throwing work in John's direction. I wondered if the question that you had raised about our appropriate partnership with with corporations, particularly around the digital space. I think there are two places that we as a board could think about that in terms of policy. But it might actually be better, addressed in terms of procedure or district or whatever. But I do think that, it makes sense, because when you were talking, I was thinking we had a great partnership with Microsoft when we started our school here over at Wilburton to do a lot of innovative digital things and other work, and it was part of our curriculum, and it was supporting our teachers, and it was providing materials. And um, but again, what are the guidelines that we use to make those decisions, and how do we set those partnerships up? Might be something that we want to outline in policy. And I don't know if you would put it in a digital safety one, or if you would put it more in a partnership with corporations and outside organizations. But either of those policies might be interesting, and I don't know that there's a wicked urgency, but I, I would like to put it on the table as something that we maybe want to track in policy space.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
It has a
continuing to
social media, it has a social media and mental health component, I think.
Yeah, for sure there. And I do think that taking a step back and thinking about the partnerships, we should be, right? It's always a balancing test, and there are sometimes competing interests, but just like we have the critical criteria review for policies, and maybe it falls under that paradigm, but understanding that we need to be asking the questions to being attentive is where I'd like to start, especially in the digital online space, given the risk to kids. Director Watson, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, well, this is a little different, this area about this TikTok night, because I did originally think and have some of the thoughts that you've expressed about, do we want to partner with this company and everything, and they've picked, I think, 2 or 3 PTAs in the entire country, and they're bringing a big budget and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not, it's my understanding, and Dr. Jarvis can correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not the district partnering with TikTok, it's the PTSA and the national PTSA. So the only decision here was the superintendent's decision whether he would rent a room to the PTA or not. And it's not the district partnering with this group.
Okay, that's good clarification. I still think that the principle and the concept I'm talking about is to not just take it for granted because it is a corporation, that it is a big corporation and they're giving us money. But I get and agree with your point that it is different if it is the PTSA versus the district. But we've got a brand, and we've got our responsibility to take care of children and to be careful what we implicitly endorse.
I think those are good. I mean, I think it makes sense to have that thought, and I would just say as we carry forward to the conversation we'll actually be having on Monday, we can talk through a lot of those, because they do tie back to values and where and how those show up. I think if we have nothing more on this, I'm going to adjourn our meeting, but I want to just say, going once, twice, 3 times. Is there anything anybody want to say? If not,
We had
I
an
think we're done.
executive session on the books for tonight. Was there any need to have that or anything?
No, we always have it listed for the ability that if in the middle of our regular meeting, we have to exit to an executive session, we can. But we didn't have it scheduled for a particular purpose tonight. Meaning, with the start of last year, I think it was added to the agenda that we could always have it listed for a notice, so that if in the middle of any board meeting there was a need to have it, we could have one. But I don't think there's. Oh, actually, I think I believe we may have talked about an item that we thought we might have a topic about tonight.
Well, there were
So
multiple
if I could
topics,
just
but
have
there-
like a 5-minute recess, I just want to check, because I think I do recall on another topic.
we had 2
saying-
topics for Monday, and one of them got sidelined, and I didn't know if that was coming
No,
back.
that one we did not carry over for today.
Okay, thank you.
that I do recall having an interim update on and saying that we would carry forward any additional questions to tonight. So
Okay,
you're
thank
correct
you.
on that. If I can, I just want to ask 1 second, if I may, just we'll recess for 5 minutes. We need probably a break anyway. So if we can, we'll just take a 5-minute break.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. I don't have audio from the room. Are we adjourned?
I didn't know if, yeah, so
I heard Joyce. Can she hear us?
I don't know if she can hear us.
I can hear you now. I was saying I
Okay.
didn't have any audio until just now, so.
Yeah, okay,
But-
so we're gonna come back to recess, so, to adjourn.
So was there no executive session?
There is no executive session, so we will adjourn at this time. So, so consistent with yeah, we are adjourned at this time. Okay, so thank you.
Good night.
All right, good night, thank you, bye.